The night I bought that 4.1M building, I thought I had finally earned peace. 4 floors, a marble lobby, a rooftop view that touched the sky. This place was supposed to be my victory, my escape from the years of disrespect, poverty, and humiliation. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had built something that was entirely mine. No favors, no help, no family claiming credit, just my hard work, my sacrifices, my blood. But life has a strange way of reminding you that peace never comes easily. The very first celebration inside my building wasn't mine. It was theirs, my family, people who hadn't spoken to me in years, people who once called me useless, broke, and cursed. They arrived without permission, without notice, without dignity. I found out through a text message from my security guard, "Sir, your family is here, a lot of them." I rushed to the lobby and froze. There was loud music shaking the walls, catering trays lined up like a wedding buffet, champagne bottles popping, children running, uncles laughing, aunties gossiping, and a banner on the staircase that said Family Success Party. They didn't even bother putting my name on it. My uncle was holding a microphone, telling guests, "Welcome to our family building," and the crowd applauded like they owned it. My cousin looked at me with the same arrogance he always had and said, "Good, you're here, don't worry, we've taken care of everything." They had hired a DJ, invited nearly 100 people, and decorated my place from top to bottom, as if generations of our family built it brick by brick. Not one person asked for permission. Not one person called to inform me. They acted like the building was their ancestral property. My mother came to me quietly, her voice low, trying to justify their shamelessness. "Beta, they just wanted to celebrate. Everyone thinks the building belongs to the family." The words stung, not because they believed it, but because they thought they had the right to believe it. Nobody was there when I was working 3 jobs, sleeping in factory storage rooms, eating instant noodles, and saving every coin I could. Nobody was with me when I was humiliated, rejected, and told I would fail. But now that success had arrived, the same people who mocked me were drinking champagne on my marble floor. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I didn't stop the music. I just stood there, calm, and said in a voice loud enough for them to hear, "If you think this building belongs to you, then make sure you enjoy tonight, because this will be a night none of you will ever forget." They laughed, thinking I was joking. But I wasn't. Tonight, I was going to teach them the difference between blood and betrayal, family and opportunists, respect and intrusion. If they walked into my building like they owned it, they would leave tonight knowing exactly who did. I walked deeper into the hall, watching them celebrate like they were in their own palace. Aunts bragged to strangers about our property, cousins boasted about future plans for the building, and my uncle stood at the center, proudly giving a toast as if he was the man who paid every brick. They had brought guests I had never seen before, businessmen, neighbors, friends of friends, everyone sipping the best wine and walking over my floors with muddy shoes. Every laugh felt like a slap, every clink of a glass sounded like an insult. I stayed quiet, but inside something colder than anger had begun to grow. It wasn't rage, it was clarity. When people believe they can steal your success, the worst mistake is to argue. The smartest move is to let them feel comfortable enough to fall. I went straight to the building manager's office and asked one question. "You received no written permission for this event, correct?" He nodded nervously. "None at all, sir." That was all I needed. I dialed 2 numbers, security and legal, and asked them to get ready. Not to stop the party, not yet, just to be prepared. When I turned to the hall, my uncle raised his glass toward me. "There he is, the lucky boy who made us all proud." His voice was dripping with fake affection, the kind that only appears when money enters a room. The guests clapped. Someone yelled, "Speech, speech!" They wanted me to stand there like a showpiece and give them a thank you for stealing my moment. I forced a polite smile and simply said, "Please, enjoy, I hope you all feel at home." The irony flew over their heads. Hours passed, the music got louder, people danced, spilled drinks, broke glass, and treated my building like a rented banquet hall. Some guests even discussed moving their offices here, asking my cousin for rent details. My cousin, who had never worked a day in his life, explaining my property like a salesman. Every second became proof that they didn't respect me, they only respected what they could take. Finally, when the night was at its peak and the DJ announced a family photo in front of the grand staircase, I stepped forward. My voice was calm, controlled, almost gentle. "Everyone, may I have your attention?" The microphone echoed and the room slowly fell silent. They thought I was about to give a speech. Instead, I looked directly at my uncle and said, "Did you take permission from the building owner to host this event?" The smile vanished from his face. "We don't need permission. Your family," he said, confused and insulted. I nodded slowly. "Then let me clarify something tonight, in front of everyone." I pulled a folded document from my pocket, the property deed, and held it up. "This building belongs to me, not this family, not the relatives who disappeared when I had nothing, not the cousins who mocked me, not the uncles who never believed in me. Me. I built it. I paid for it. I earned it. And every person standing here is trespassing." A quiet panic began spreading across the room. Someone whispered, "He's joking, right?" But I wasn't. I turned to security standing by the entrance and said, "Start the process." No one realized yet that tonight was already over. The security team began moving in, but not aggressively, just firm, professional, and silent. Their presence alone was enough to shift the room's energy. Laughter died, music stopped. People who had been bragging seconds ago suddenly began adjusting their clothes, hiding plates, stepping away from the bar like children caught stealing. My uncle, red-faced and trembling with fake authority, raised his voice. "You can't throw us out. We are his family. This building is ours too." His voice cracked, not from anger, but from fear. The moment he realized the situation had flipped, his confidence collapsed. I took a slow breath, controlling the storm inside me. Family doesn't invade someone's home. Family asks. Family respects. I pointed at the decorations, the overpriced catering, the guest list full of strangers, the mess they created, and said, "If you respected me, you would have knocked before entering. You would have asked before planning a party, but you didn't. Because you don't care about me. You care about what I own." People began whispering, eyes shifting, faces turning pale. The lawyers I had called earlier arrived with documents and instructions. One by one they took pictures, recorded videos, and collected witness statements. Every illegal act, unauthorized event, property damage, alcohol without a permit, was being documented. And then the lawyer spoke loudly so the entire hall could hear. "Everyone present here is officially being notified. This is private property. You have no written permission to be here. Vacate the premises immediately or face legal action." That sentence hit harder than any shout or fight could have. Some guests rushed to grab their bags. Some hurried their children toward the exit. The same cousins who were acting like princes just hours earlier were suddenly avoiding eye contact, pretending they had nothing to do with anything. But my family, the ones Ho started this, stood frozen, humiliated, and speechless. My aunt walked up to me, her makeup smudged, voice shaking. "How can you do this? We raised you. We are blood." I looked her dead in the eyes and replied, "You raised me? When I slept on floors, where were you? When I asked for help, who helped? When I failed, who stood beside me? Not one of you." She opened her mouth to argue, but words wouldn't come. Guilt choked her. Then my uncle tried one last desperate move. He pointed at the guests, the food, the decorations, and said, "We spent money on this event. This celebration was for you." I laughed, a calm, cold laugh. "You spent money on your pride, not on me. If this celebration was for me, you would have invited me." His silence answered everything. Security began escorting people out, one family at a time, while lawyers handed out notices. My relatives left with lowered heads, angry whispers, and the kind of embarrassment that burns for a lifetime. The grand hall that was full of noise an hour ago was now filled with nothing but shame and footsteps. But the night wasn't over. The exile had just begun, because the real revenge was still waiting upstairs. By the time the hall emptied, it looked like a battlefield after a silent war. Decorations half torn down, spilled wine on marble, broken glass reflecting the chandelier lights. Everything they touched carried the same reminder. They came to celebrate themselves in a place that was never theirs. I wasn't satisfied with just pushing them out. That would make them angry for a few days, and then they would return again, pretending nothing happened. I needed something permanent, something they would never forget, something that would draw a line they could never cross again. I went upstairs to the conference room, where my lawyer was waiting with a folder. Inside it were documents I had been preparing quietly for months. See, I knew this day would come. Success attracts leeches faster than blood attracts sharks. The only difference is, leeches pretend to love you. We opened the folder, reviewed every detail, and by morning, I was ready. At dawn, while the rest of the city slept peacefully, A knock echoed across the homes of my relatives. Couriers delivered thick envelopes, legal notices. Every person who had claimed ownership, used my name for business, taken advantage of my success, borrowed money, or used my property without permission, received a professional, emotionless reminder that their privileges were over. No warnings, no second chances. My uncle woke up to a notice demanding payment for property damage and an additional lawsuit for unauthorized use of a private building. My cousin, who bragged about opening an office in my building, received a cease and desist order, and my aunt, who used my success to show off in society, was served for defamation after lying publicly about our family property. It wasn't revenge out of anger, it was revenge built with law, patience, and precision. By afternoon, my phone was full of calls and messages. Missed calls from cousins, long emotional texts from relatives pretending to be innocent, voice notes filled with crying and begging. My mother came to me holding her phone, eyes worried. "They are saying you destroyed the family," she whispered. I took her hand gently and replied, "No, they destroyed the family the day they tried to steal what I worked for." Hours later, they all showed up at the building, not barging in, not shouting, not confident, just standing outside like strangers. The same people who once walked in like owners now waited for permission. My uncle stepped forward, no microphone, no arrogance, just a thin, shaking voice. "Can we talk?" I walked out to face them, but this time I stood as the man I became, not the boy they once controlled. "This building is mine," I said. "My success is mine. And respect is not a right, it is earned." My words weren't loud, but they hit harder than a scream. Some lowered their heads, some cried, some looked like they wanted to argue but couldn't. My uncle finally spoke the truth he had avoided his entire life. "We were jealous. We thought if you made it, everyone would think we failed. We wanted to take a little piece of your success for ourselves." Hearing him admit it gave me a kind of closure no apology ever could. "There is a difference," I told them, "between asking to celebrate my success and acting like you own it." They nodded, defeated. They didn't come to fight anymore. They came to beg, to apologize, to stay in my life, and I knew exactly what to do next. Not out of cruelty, out of clarity. Because exile doesn't mean revenge is over. Exile means the story is reaching its final scene. I looked at every face standing outside my building. Faces that once enjoyed my misery, once laughed at my failures, once celebrated when I had nothing. Now they stood in silence, waiting for a verdict like defendants in a courtroom they never expected to enter. Their pride was gone. Their arrogance was gone. All that remained was fear, the fear of losing access to the success they tried to steal. My cousin, the loudest of them all, stepped forward. First. His voice was weak, trembling like he had suddenly realized what consequences actually felt like. "We didn't mean to hurt you," he said. "We just wanted to be a part of your life." I stared at him for a moment. This was the same man who once told me I would never achieve anything, the same man who refused to help me when I needed support. Now he wanted a place in my life just because I proved him wrong. "You could have been a part of my life," I replied, "if you stood beside me when I had nothing. But you wanted the destination without walking the journey. That is not family, that is opportunism." My uncle tried to speak next, offering apologies and excuses, blaming misunderstandings, traditions, and everything except his own pride. I listened quietly. When he finished, I simply asked, "Tell me something. If I had failed, if I had lost everything, would any of you have invited me to your party?" His silence was the answer. Not one of them could say yes. And for the first time, they saw the truth about themselves. I didn't shout, I didn't insult, I didn't embarrass them. Instead, I chose the type of revenge that hurts the most. Truth delivered without anger. "I am not throwing anyone out of my life," I said. "I am simply putting everyone where they belong, outside my walls until they learn respect." Their eyes widened because this wasn't temporary. This was a boundary, stronger than any wall, deeper than any insult. They left one by one, walking away quietly, heads lowered. No music, no celebration, no pride, just silence. When the last car disappeared down the road, I went back inside the building. For the first time, it felt like mine again. Not because they were gone, but because I finally chose myself over the people who only loved what I earned. My mother stood beside me, eyes glistening. "They won't forgive you," she whispered. I smiled gently. "I didn't do this for their forgiveness, I did it for my peace." That night I walked through every floor, the lobby, the offices, the rooftop, not to check damages, not to inspect anything, just to feel what I had built with my own hands, after years of struggle and humiliation. The building stood silent, tall, and beautiful, proof that even when the world turns its back, you can build your own future. Some people say revenge is loud, but sometimes the most powerful revenge is calm, legal, and final. I didn't destroy them, I simply showed them who they were, and I showed myself who I had become. The party they started ended in exile, their pride ended in silence, and my journey finally began with dignity. Because success means nothing if you allow the same people who broke you to enjoy what you built.